I have been employed at a large corporation in New York for approximately 2 years now. The expanse is enormous, and the individuals here seem to be in a constant rush, as if their very existence hinges on their frantic pace. I'm just another individual navigating the daily grind, focusing on my tasks and fulfilling my responsibilities. At 28, I find myself in a place where my expectations for life are surprisingly low. It's not that I'm unhappy, but everything seems a bit lackluster. My personal life is as exciting as a roll of paper towels. Generally dull and wrinkled by day's end. I've experienced a few relationships, but none have endured long enough to suggest that anything could evolve into something meaningful. There's always an explanation for why things lose their spark. They didn't align, or perhaps I wasn't prepared, or they weren't prepared. There's always an issue at hand. Regardless, this company isn't one of those small startups filled with trendy bean bags and ping-pong tables. It's enormous, truly enormous. Imagine a vast workforce, a towering structure in the heart of Manhattan, and numerous departments operating independently yet harmoniously. I'm involved in marketing, and while it's manageable, the hustle never seems to let up. Endless workdays, deadlines that loom like a heavy cloud, and meetings that seem to drift without purpose. It's challenging, yet I find it manageable. I have employment, and that suffices. Allow me to introduce you to an individual who has truly enhanced the allure of this place. Patricia is her name. She holds the title of our boss, yet her approach is anything but conventional. She's elevated, soaring to great heights. It's what you might refer to as senior management. She seems to be around 48, but truthfully, she appears much younger. There's more to her than just appearances. It's the way she presents herself. Patricia carries a captivating presence, a weightiness that commands attention and draws everyone in when she enters a space. Engaging with her requires a certain level of seriousness, and humor is not part of the equation. She exudes an undeniable presence, commanding respect as if she reigns supreme, while you find yourself in a position of uncertainty, wishing to remain unnoticed. Interestingly, there seems to be a lack of insight into her personal life. She remains unwed, as no one ever brings up a husband, and her social life is shrouded in complete enigma. I've come across whispers, yet nothing solid has emerged. She maintains a strong sense of privacy, and that's perfectly acceptable. Her journey, her enterprise. Everyone simply acknowledges that. However, one aspect that truly captures attention is her lunchtime routine. Each day, at the stroke of noon, she finds herself in the cafeteria. She picks up her lunch and settles at one of the tables, typically in solitude. I've never observed her dining with anyone else, and the majority tend to steer clear of sitting too near her. Yet, on that specific day, for reasons unknown, I simply felt drawn to take a seat beside her. The cafeteria buzzed with activity, and I found myself yearning for a serene corner to enjoy my sandwich. I took a seat at a table directly opposite hers. I hadn't intended to engage with her, I simply thought it was preferable to lingering uncomfortably near the salad bar. I went through my routine, took a few bites, and scrolled through emails, all while pretending to be productive. However, I must admit, I wasn't fully focused on my actions. My hand grazed the coffee cup I had set a tad too near the table's edge. As if time had slowed, the cup tilted precariously, and steaming coffee cascaded onto her pristine white blouse. I stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. Patricia's gaze snapped upward just as the coffee erupted, splattering onto her. A dreadful, charged silence hung in the air for a moment. My heart sank, and an undeniable certainty washed over me. This was the moment. She was on the brink of losing her composure, and I could feel my job hanging by a thread. To my utter astonishment, she simply burst into laughter. A brief, soft chuckle, yet it was sufficient to surprise me. "Well," she remarked, rising to her feet, "I suppose I'll be in need of a new shirt." She remained silent, showed no signs of distress, and acted in a way that completely surprised me. She strolled off to the restroom with a serene demeanor to change. I found myself in a moment of uncertainty, caught between the urge to chuckle at the absurdity of it all and the sinking feeling that my professional journey might be at its end. How could I have made such a significant mistake? The remainder of my lunch passed in a fog, an attempt to erase the entire episode from my mind, yet it lingered stubbornly, refusing to fade away. Patricia, typically known for her serious demeanor, was surprisingly the most relaxed I had ever seen her. It felt as though I were invisible in her universe until that very instant. Yet here I was, right in the thick of it. Unbeknownst to me, the situation was poised to become even more peculiar. The remainder of the day following the coffee spill felt like a haze. I found it impossible to concentrate on anything. The moment kept echoing in my mind, replaying endlessly. Whenever I shut my eyes, the image of Patricia's white blouse soaked in coffee flooded my mind. I reassured myself that it wasn't as dire as I imagined, yet beneath the surface, I recognized it had the potential to be far worse. I might receive an email from HR soon, possibly even a warning regarding my conduct. I typically wasn't one to feel anxious. I had certainly encountered my fair share of uncomfortable moments in the past, spilling drinks on others, stumbling over objects, you name it, but this experience felt distinct. This was Patricia, the one individual in the office you always wanted to keep on your good side. She had a way of making you reconsider every word and action, whether during a meeting or simply as you strolled by her desk. The thought that I had spoiled her lunch and stained her shirt weighed heavily on me, making it feel as though I had crossed an irreparable boundary. The minutes crawled by in the languid afternoon. Each time I glanced up, I was convinced she would be there in my doorway, summoning me in to dismiss me, or at the very least, make me feel utterly foolish for my thoughtless error. Yet, it never came to pass. Time slipped away, yet everything remained the same. It was only at the close of the day, just as I was preparing to gather my things and head out, that an email from Patricia landed in my inbox. My heart raced at the sight of her name in the subject line. It felt as though I was on the brink of facing a reckoning. I opened it, bracing myself for a message that felt distant and impersonal, something along the lines of, "I've discussed your conduct with HR today. Kindly meet me in my office tomorrow." Rather, it conveyed a clear and uncomplicated message. "Kevin, may I have a word with you for a moment? I kindly request your presence in my office at 5:30 p.m. Patricia." That was the end. There was no reference to the spill. No harsh criticisms. I gazed at the email for a moment, uncertain of how to interpret it. Perhaps she was merely adhering to a sense of professionalism. Perhaps she was allowing me the opportunity to clarify my side. I was unable to decipher it. Regardless, I wasn't particularly eager to encounter her once more after the calamity that had unfolded during my lunch. At 5:30 p.m., I hesitantly approached her office. My heart raced uncontrollably, and I found myself pondering whether this moment signaled the conclusion of my career. Upon knocking and stepping into her office, I discovered her at her desk, her familiar calm demeanor restored. She wasn't furious, yet the intensity of her gaze had an unsettling effect, making me feel as though I were under scrutiny. "Kevin," she said, gesturing for me to take a seat. "You're likely curious about the reason I summoned you here." I nodded, feeling a parched sensation in my mouth. I was completely unprepared for what lay ahead. I steeled myself for a discourse that might involve some form of admonishment. Once more, she caught me off guard. She expressed her concern, wanting to ensure that you were all right. Her tone was gentler than I anticipated. "It's really nothing to worry about. Truly, there's no need for concern. Events unfold." I blinked, uncertain if I had truly grasped her words. "Are you really not feeling upset?" I inquired, still unable to grasp the reality of the situation. She smiled, a subtle, authentic smile. "No, I'm not feeling upset. It's simply one of those occurrences." For a fleeting moment, her eyes took on a gentler hue, and it seemed as though the conversation had transcended the mere incident of the coffee spill. Perhaps she aimed to soothe my nerves, or perhaps her kindness simply shone through. Regardless, it caught me off guard. "However, I had a question for you," she went on, reclining in her chair. "What are your plans for dinner this evening?" I was taken by surprise. I gazed at her, my eyelids fluttering as I attempted to comprehend the inquiry. What was this all about? Was she merely being courteous? Or could there be deeper layers to this than I initially perceived? I hesitated, unable to find the words. I don't really have any plans at the moment. She nodded with a contemplative air. Would you care to join me for dinner? A location exists in close proximity. Nothing extravagant. A serene spot to relax and recharge after a tiring day. It was hard to wrap my mind around the words being spoken. Patricia, my straightforward, authoritative, and enigmatic superior, was extending an invitation for dinner? My thoughts swirled with a blend of bewilderment and intrigue. What makes me the one? What is the reason for this moment? I was completely unaware. I nodded, attempting to maintain my composure, though I could feel my voice waver slightly. I would be delighted to. She acknowledged me with a slight nod, as if it were nothing out of the ordinary. Excellent. I'll meet you there in roughly an hour. Let's gather outside the building. As I exited her office that day, I remained enveloped in a haze, grappling with the whirlwind of events that had just unfolded. She presented it with such nonchalance, as if it were trivial, yet the invitation loomed large in significance. I found myself questioning whether it was a trial or if she simply desired a companion for conversation. Regardless, a sense of anticipation bubbled within me about the unfolding possibilities ahead. I never anticipated it would amount to much, yet there was an undeniable feeling within me that this dinner marked the beginning of something fresh. I wasn't quite certain what it was, yet. Yet, I couldn't dismiss the sensation that a change had occurred, one that caught me off guard, leaving me somewhat anxious about the implications it held for my future. I wandered around my apartment for the next hour, grappling with the meaning of the invitation. Shall we have dinner with Patricia? What was happening? Throughout my entire tenure at the company, I had never envisioned that this could occur. Certainly, she maintained a courteous and professional demeanor, but that was the extent of it. We had never truly conversed beyond the confines of our workplace, and now I found myself on the brink of sharing a dinner with her. It felt like a dream. I attempted to keep my thoughts in check, yet the deeper I delved, the more anxious I felt. I found myself questioning the nature of this dinner altogether. Was it a casual thing? Was she merely showing kindness in response to my mistake? Or could there be another layer to this situation? I found it difficult to comprehend. No matter what, I was aware that I couldn't arrive appearing disheveled. I swiftly donned an outfit that was a touch more polished than my typical workwear. Nothing overly extravagant, but at least a shirt that suggested I hadn't just woken up. I arrived at the restaurant slightly ahead of schedule, my heart racing in my chest. The venue was intimate and inviting, characterized by soft lighting and hushed exchanges. It wasn't extravagant, but it was the kind of spot you'd choose if you sought to relax. I paused for a moment outside, absorbing the surroundings, and then noticed Patricia approaching me. She donned a simple black dress, yet it exuded elegance on her. She possessed a demeanor that effortlessly blended professionalism with approachability. A sense of being slightly overwhelmed washed over me as she drew near. Her smile lit up the moment she caught sight of me. "Hello, Kevin. I'm so pleased you could join us," she said, her voice soothing and inviting. "Absolutely," I responded, making an effort to project more assurance than I truly possessed. "I appreciate the invitation." She gestured for me to accompany her into the restaurant, and we settled at a cozy table tucked away in the back. It felt like a dream. Here I was, sitting across from Patricia, the woman who had always seemed like a distant professional figure, now appearing as someone entirely transformed. The initial moments of our meal were filled with light conversation. She inquired about my day and the projects I was engaged in, and I reciprocated by asking about her, making an effort to keep it natural. The ease of our conversation left me in awe, especially considering we had never engaged in such a manner before. Her disciplined, professional demeanor remained intact, yet an additional layer had emerged. Something that feels more personal, more connected. I caught myself chuckling at a few of her tales, and she genuinely appeared to be having a good time. Yet, as the evening progressed, I became aware of something different. A transformation occurred within her. She began to reveal herself in a manner that took me by surprise. Uncertain whether it was the wine or the soothing atmosphere away from the office, Patricia gradually eased into the moment, slowly sharing fragments of her story. She shared her experiences at work, detailing the immense pressure she faced and the challenges of maintaining balance in her life. It felt as though she was lowering her defenses, and I couldn't shake the sense of being somewhat privileged. She was unlike anything I had ever witnessed before. "Text, I don't know if you've ever noticed," she said, leaning back in her chair, "but it's challenging to truly connect with others in this line of work. People tend to be absorbed in their own concerns, and it becomes even more challenging when you're the one leading the way. I can see where you're coming from." It was simple to overlook the fact that those in authority were, after all, just like the rest of us. I had always perceived her as an unyielding presence, a person who seemed to have a clear direction and never revealed any signs of weakness. However, as I listened to her discuss the challenges she encountered, I began to perceive a new dimension of her character. "I suppose I hadn't considered it from that perspective before," I remarked. "Indeed, I can understand how solitude might set in." She nodded, a faint smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Precisely. Opportunities to engage in conversation don't come around all the time, do they? To genuinely connect with someone beyond the confines of work or superficiality." I found myself unexpectedly feeling a deep sense of empathy for her. Certainly, she held the position of my superior, yet in that instant, she didn't embody that role. She was merely an individual. A person with her own battles, her own aspirations and anxieties. I encountered a facet of her that was entirely unfamiliar, and I felt an undeniable attraction to it. As the evening progressed, we exchanged deeper stories, shared more laughter, and the dialogue became increasingly effortless. For the first time, I sensed I was witnessing the true Patricia, not the authoritative figure who demanded respect and maintained a strictly professional demeanor. At last, the night drew to a close, and we rose to depart. Patricia glanced my way, her face reflecting deep contemplation. "You know, Kevin," she said gently, "I truly appreciate you being here tonight. I rarely engage in this, but I'm pleased we had the chance to converse." I found myself at a loss for words. "Absolutely, I feel the same way." I mentioned it in a laid-back way, but truthfully, I felt somewhat swamped by the entire situation. As we exited the restaurant and exchanged our farewells, an undeniable sense of change lingered in the air between us. The way she gazed at me, the way she revealed herself, it seemed to transcend the boundaries of a mere friendly dinner. Uncertainty loomed over me as the night approached, yet an undeniable sense of anticipation stirred within, hinting at the possibility of unforeseen events ahead. It was an unexpected occurrence, yet it demanded my attention. The days that followed dinner with Patricia passed in a haze. I returned to the office, putting on a facade of normalcy, yet beneath the surface, everything felt altered. Whenever I caught sight of her at the office, a strange flutter would twist in my stomach. I had certainly engaged with her in the past. We had exchanged words many times before, yet this moment felt distinct. This held deep significance. A newfound intimacy blossomed between us. It felt as though we were treading along an invisible boundary, uncertain whether we were stepping over it or remaining within its confines. Several days passed, and once more, she extended an invitation to me. This occasion, it wasn't for dinner. It was merely a brief coffee encounter. A message arrived in the morning, bearing an invitation. It was nothing official, merely a straightforward message. "This afternoon, you can find me at the coffee shop just around the corner. If you find yourself available, feel free to join me." I found myself pondering whether it was merely casual or held deeper significance, yet my curiosity was undeniably piqued. I responded, "I would be delighted to. I will arrive at noon." As I entered the coffee shop, I spotted Patricia nestled at a quaint corner table by the window. She appeared even more at ease than before. Her usual professional attire was absent. Instead, she donned a simple sweater and jeans, giving her a more approachable appearance. The Patricia before me was a far cry from the woman I had known in the office. This was a new experience, and as I took my seat, it struck me how much I had begun to anticipate these gatherings. "Hello, Kevin. How is your day treating you?" she inquired with the same serene smile she wore during dinner. "Fine, just the same as always," I responded. "Occupied yet under control." She gave a slight nod. "I understand your perspective. At times, it feels as though the entire week merges into a single, indistinct haze. It feels like ages since I've carved out a moment just for me." I chuckled, somewhat uneasily. "Absolutely, I understand that. The days seem to blur together endlessly." She tilted her head and smiled once more, her eyes glimmering with an intensity that felt slightly heightened. "I appreciate that you understand. The majority do not. They believe it's merely about deadlines and meetings, yet there's an immense amount of pressure lurking beneath the surface." As we both savored our coffee, a silence enveloped us, and for a fleeting moment, words eluded us. As I pondered what to express, it struck me that I felt a greater sense of ease in her presence than I ever did at the office. She had transcended the role of merely being my superior. She was a person I could confide in. It was an odd sensation, yet there was a certain warmth to it. "To be honest, I was surprised by how well you listened," she remarked after a moment of reflection. "Engaging in conversation with you has been quite effortless." I blinked, taken aback. "Ah, I see now. I'm here to listen, and I'm pleased to know it makes a difference." She let out a gentle laugh. "Indeed, it does. Not everyone has the knack for it, you know. Yet, you understand. Your demeanor exudes a serene confidence." Uncertainty lingered in the air. Was she offering a compliment or merely engaging in light banter? Yet, the intensity of her gaze quickened my pulse, leaving me captivated. The stillness that enveloped us was not awkward, rather, it thrummed with an unspoken energy that eluded my understanding. After some time, she shifted the conversation. "So, how are things progressing at work? Are there any projects that have you feeling particularly enthusiastic?" We transitioned into discussing work matters, yet it felt more relaxed than the usual atmosphere in the office. There was an undeniable connection between us, and I discovered a level of honesty with her that I had never experienced before. "Actually," I said, leaning in slightly, "I've been reflecting quite a bit on the project with the new team. I'm uncertain if I'm approaching this correctly, but I'm making an effort to align everyone's understanding. The weight of it is considerable." She arched an eyebrow, unmistakably captivated. "You've consistently shown great skill in working with the team. You have a knack for maintaining order." That lifted my spirits a bit. It struck me just how significant her approval was to me when she made that remark. Receiving that from her was significant, as she reserved her compliments for truly deserving moments. "Thank you for that," I remarked. "Sometimes, I believe it's essential to pause and reflect. One can easily become engrossed in the intricacies." She gave a slight nod. "Absolutely, I understand that. At times, taking a break allows for a clearer view of the situation. It seems I've come to understand that through experience." A soft chuckle passed between us, and I felt an undeniable bond beginning to form. In the days that followed, Patricia and I began to convene with increasing frequency. It unfolded unexpectedly, a delightful spontaneity, as if she were discovering small moments to share in my presence. She would ask me to join her for coffee during our lunch breaks or to catch a quick dinner after work. It was always laid back, never contrived, yet I began to observe how her interactions with me shifted. Initially, it was nothing significant, merely subtle remarks or the way her gaze lingered on me during our conversations. At times, I would notice her gaze lingering a bit more than normal, as if she were examining me closely. Uncertainty clouded my mind regarding her thoughts, yet I couldn't ignore the undeniable shift occurring between us. She never brought up our first dinner, the coffee spill, or anything of that nature. There was an unvoiced connection between us, a recognition that what had transpired lingered in the air, yet neither of us felt the need to articulate it. I began to feel increasingly at ease in her presence, and with each of our small gatherings, it became more challenging to distinguish the authoritative figure I recognized from the person I was beginning to understand. There was an undeniable quality in the way she would reveal herself, the subtle lift of her smile that suggested this was evolving beyond mere professional boundaries. It was transforming into something entirely different, something I wasn't certain I was prepared for, yet found myself unable to resist. Perhaps, just perhaps, she was experiencing the same emotions. On a Thursday, everything began to change for the better. Patricia had extended another invitation, this time for a relaxed dinner outing. She proposed a quaint little bistro just a short stroll from the office, a serene spot with soft lighting and a cozy ambience. Initially, I assumed it would be yet another typical work dinner, but there was a distinct nuance in her tone when she made the request. It felt like she was anticipating something greater. Upon my arrival, I found Patricia already present, patiently waiting for me by the door. She appeared effortlessly graceful, donning a sleek black dress that hugged her silhouette, revealing the depth of her beauty in a striking way. I had always held her in high regard from a distance, yet in that instant, she appeared more inviting. A gentle warmth lingered in her gaze that had escaped my attention until now. "Hello, Kevin." With a warm smile, she rose to her feet and greeted. "I'm pleased you were able to join us." I nodded, slightly surprised by the closeness of the moment we were sharing. This caught me off guard, especially coming from her. What was meant to be just another casual meeting had transformed into something altogether different. We settled in, and as always, the dialogue began on a cheerful note. We discussed our work, the projects I was involved in, and what had been occupying her time. Yet, there was an intriguing quality in the manner she addressed me. Her voice had a gentle quality, almost teasing, that sent my heart racing. "You know," she said, absently swirling her wine glass, "I've found myself thinking about you quite a bit lately." I was pleasantly surprised by how easy it was to engage in conversation with you. I've encountered individuals who tend to be more closed off, and your ability to listen has been a refreshing change, something that's surprisingly uncommon. Her words took me by surprise, yet I made an effort to conceal my reaction. "I'm merely attempting to be a supportive teammate," I remarked, with a hint of humor. "There's nothing remarkable about it." She leaned in a little closer, and for the first time I sensed an unspoken tension hanging in the air between us. The atmosphere was thick, pulsating with an indefinable energy. "You're so much more than that, Kevin," she said gently. "I'm sure you're aware of that. I find great pleasure in our time together, more than I initially anticipated." A warmth crept across my cheeks, leaving me at a loss for words. We had consistently maintained a professional boundary, and now she was venturing into territory I wasn't certain I was prepared to explore. We kept eating, yet an unmistakable change hung in the air. The light-hearted exchange evolved into a deeper, more intimate dialogue. We began to share stories about our lives beyond the office. Patricia shared fragments of her history, mentioning that she had been married once but hadn't truly engaged in dating since then. Her voice carried a weight of sorrow as she recounted her past, revealing a fragility I had never witnessed before. I unexpectedly opened up more than intended, discussing my past relationships, those that never really led to anything meaningful. I shared with her my long-standing reluctance to form deep connections, fearing the pain that might come with them. She absorbed every word, her gaze fixed on me, as if each syllable held a weight she couldn't afford to miss. As the night progressed, the distance between us appeared to diminish even further. The dialogue dwindled, and I became aware of how much nearer she had shifted, as though she desired to be in my proximity. The atmosphere had shifted, shedding any illusion of a simple dinner. We were nestled together, the warmth of her body enveloping me, the delicate fragrance of her perfume hanging softly in the air between us. In that moment, she extended her hand, softly grazing mine. Initially, it was so understated that I couldn't quite determine if it had been deliberate. Yet, as she kept her hand in place, I raised my eyes to hers, locking onto her gaze. "Kevin," she murmured, her tone soft and intimate. "This has been on my mind for some time now. Learn more about our story." I found myself at a loss for words. A portion of me felt astonished, while another part had anticipated this outcome. However, I found myself uncertain about whether I was prepared to embrace the step she was proposing. Her gaze met mine with a fervor that was unlike anything I had encountered previously. Before I had the chance to reply, she leaned closer, her lips softly grazing my cheek in a tender kiss. It was more than a mere act of kindness. It was as if a vow had been made, a rare moment of closeness that I had never shared with her until now. My heart raced, and I found myself momentarily paralyzed, uncertain of my next move. Yet, just as I was about to withdraw, she reclined slightly, fixing me with her intense, probing gaze. "I'm not trying to complicate matters," she murmured gently. Her voice was scarcely a murmur. Yet, I cannot control my emotions. It felt as though the dam had burst wide open. The facade had finally crumbled. Enough with the games. In that fleeting instant, it was merely the two of us, exchanging something genuine. I could no longer refuse to acknowledge it. She captivated me. From the instant she extended the invitation for dinner, I felt a shift, and now, with her lips mere inches from mine, I could no longer feign indifference to this desire. I pressed my lips against hers. Initially, it unfolded with a certain slowness, a tentative quality, as though we were both cautiously exploring the depths. But soon, the kiss intensified, and the world around us vanished. There existed neither an office nor meetings, nor the typical boss-employee dynamic. It was just the two of us, in that instant, at last confronting the truth we had been skirting for ages. As we separated, I found myself breathless, my heart pounding fiercely. I gazed into her eyes, and for the first time, I perceived something entirely new within them. Someone beyond the superior I had recognized. Something that left me uncertain about my next steps. Yet, there was one certainty I held close. We had both crossed a threshold, and there was no turning back from this point. The week following our kiss felt like a haze. All things seemed altered, yet oddly familiar. We had crossed a boundary, and even though neither of us voiced it directly, the silence was heavy with unexpressed thoughts. Tasks continued as normal, yet a change was evident. Whenever I encountered Patricia, her eyes held a gaze that revealed everything had shifted. The facade we had maintained for ages was starting to fade, revealing something much more intimate beneath it. I was uncertain about what lay ahead. In the aftermath of it all, my mind was consumed with thoughts of her, endlessly revisiting that night in my memory. The embrace of lips. The intimacy. The sensation of finally recognizing what had been quietly brewing beneath the surface for an extended period. Yet, there lingered a sense of trepidation. Apprehension about the implications this might hold for us both. I was employed by her, after all. She held the position of my superior. What might unfold for our professional paths? Regarding our connection with our colleagues? Was I merely a passing thought in her mind? Was this truly happening? Patricia appeared equally unsure, yet she maintained her calm demeanor, composed and embodying the same serious professionalism I had always recognized in her. Yet now, as we encountered each other, an undeniable tension lingered, a proximity that demanded attention. She had extended another dinner invitation, and this occasion felt distinctly more significant. She invited me to her apartment after work. Upon my arrival at her residence, the door swung open, revealing her, as breathtaking as always. She wore a cozy, gentle sweater, her hair cascading freely around her shoulders. For the first time, she found herself not in the role of the commanding boss. She was merely a woman, exposed in a manner I had never encountered before. "Hey, Kevin," she said, her voice soft, her gaze searching my expression. "Step inside. I've been eager to have a conversation." I entered, and the apartment enveloped me in warmth and a sense of welcome. A modest table was prepared for the evening meal, with a bottle of wine uncorked and waiting. It was evident how much care she had invested in crafting this moment. She had more than mere impressiveness in mind. She was attempting to convey a message. Something genuine. We gathered around the table, and our chat began in a light-hearted manner, but before long, it shifted to the unspoken issue that loomed large. The embrace of lips. The significance of it. where do we go from here? I've been reflecting deeply on what transpired, Kevin, she said, her voice softer now, more earnest. Our story. Though I realize I should have kept things simpler, my emotions are beyond my control. I'm sure you're aware of that at this point. I nodded, a heaviness settling in my chest. I had been contemplating it as well. Attempting to make sense of all that has transpired. Yet, the reality was, I had no desire to turn my back on it. Not at this moment. Not after all that we experienced together. I expressed to her, with complete sincerity, that I wished to avoid any regrets about this. I can't continue to act as if everything remains the same between us. She extended her arm over the table, clasping my hand gently in hers. Kevin, I've dedicated countless years to shaping this career, maintaining professionalism, and keeping my emotions at bay. Yet with you, I sense that obligation has lifted. I desire something greater. I'm at a loss for how to make this come together. The vulnerability in her eyes caught me off guard, revealing a depth I hadn't anticipated. Patricia, the resilient and composed leader of the company, was now revealing her true self, unveiling a facet of her character I had never anticipated. You don't need to have all the answers at this moment, I said, gently squeezing her hand. However, I am present, and I am open to exploring the possibilities ahead. The atmosphere in the room transformed, and for the first time, we were just two individuals, no longer defined by our roles as boss and employee, or as colleagues. Two individuals who stumbled upon an unforeseen treasure, ripe for discovery. The evening lingered, and following dinner, we engaged in hours of conversation. We discussed a myriad of topics. The essence of our anxieties, our aspirations, our existence. As I stepped out of her apartment that night, a realization settled in. This was something we were determined to pursue. The days that followed at work were imbued with a subtle sense of comprehension. Silence spoke volumes. We understood the unfolding events. Our relationship remained hidden from the world, yet it no longer felt like a concealed truth. We started to enjoy each other's company beyond the office, sharing meals, exploring parks, and embarking on weekend getaways. With each passing day, our bond deepened, and I could sense that what we shared was truly extraordinary. Patricia had transcended the role of mere supervisor. She was my collaborator. And somehow, the notion of us collaborating felt entirely natural now. It seemed effortless. A month later, one evening following a serene dinner at her home, she turned to me, a smile gracing her lips. "What are your thoughts on this?" she inquired. I understood her intention. The choice had long been settled within us both. We were at a point of no return, and we both understood that clearly. "We're in this together," I stated, my tone unwavering. In an instant, everything in our lives had changed. We had transcended the boundaries of mere colleagues, embarking on a journey through the intricate dynamics of our professional connection. We were two souls navigating the complexities of life, yet fully aware that what we shared was genuine. A lasting creation. And that, to me, was everything I had ever desired. To ultimately discover something that resonated deeply. Something that transcended status, job titles, and expectations. Two individuals, united, navigating their journey together. A smile crept across my face, aware that this was merely the start of something greater.